So PlayStation is getting sued in California because you clicked buy now on the button, but technically you're not buying your games. You don't own your games. Now they're getting sued. And I think this is going to be one of many, many lawsuits. They're getting sued overseas too, if I remember correctly, because they have been telling consumers, hey, you own your games. You own your games. Buy your game. You're not actually buying your digital game. You're leasing your digital game until they decide they want to get rid of it or change it or whatever. And they're not making that expressly clear to the consumer. So the consumer thinks you're buying it like you have a physical good and you're going to be able to own this physical good forever. And that's not really the case. We've seen that Sony's been yanking movies off the platform, and those people supposedly bought those movies as well. So there is a definite future coming in which some of these companies are going to start pulling content that consumers have paid for off of their platforms. They don't have an obligation, I guess, legally to keep that content online forever, especially if the company goes out of business someday. You're not going to be able to like gift your grandkids your PlayStation library. I guess I don't know how that works, but I think a lot of people think this stuff is just going to stay online forever, and that's not realistic, especially with all the mergers and everything that go on. So let's take a look at this and talk about Sony getting sued again. And I think we're going to have a whole bunch of lawsuits between now and 2028 when they end physical discs. They said it's not going to go well for them, I don't think, but who knows? Maybe people are like, yeah, we don't care. Play game now, new game, new shiny thing, play it now. Before we get into it any further, please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants, guys. Hey, listen to the audio version of CLOWNFISH TV. There actually are some episodes out there you will not find here on YouTube. Check it out. iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music. Subscribe, give us a like, give us a rating. Helps the channel out over there as well. So thank you very much for that. So this is coming from Yahoo News. You clicked buy now on PlayStation. A new lawsuit says Sony tricked you. They tricked you, guys. You're staring at your TV, controller in hand, finger hovering over the buy now button for a $69.99 game. The button feels like a transaction, a purchase, yours forever, except it isn't. 4 California gamers filed a class action lawsuit against Sony in 2026, June of this year, arguing that PlayStation's checkout wording violates California Assembly Bill 2426, a state law effective since 2025 that requires digital stores to tell you plainly you're buying a license, not a product. That is actually true. And anybody that wants to argue with that, that's a pointless argument to have. It's if you are buying digital content, whether it's Voodoo or Comixology or whatever, unless you can download a file that is independent of the website, doesn't do a license check or whatever, you don't actually own that content, right? And all these games, I mean, we could argue that your game on a disc, that you technically don't own it because it has to check back and see if you have the license. It's got to check with the PlayStation Network. If they don't like you and it requires PlayStation Network to function properly and something happens and you lose your account, then you're out of luck too, right? Even though you bought a physical disc. So the whole thing is stupid. I liked it so much better when you just bought a console and bought cartridges and plugged them in and they worked and you owned them. And if you wanted to sell them, you could sell them. They said the complaint pulls no punches. Consumers who buy digital games through PlayStation do not acquire ownership of the products, according to a report on the filing. Instead, Sony grants a limited and revocable license to access the software, subject to multiple restrictions contained in a separate software product license agreement. The words buy now and confirm purchase sit right there on the screen, radiating retail confidence. The legal reality sits buried. In terms of service, nobody reads. This sounds kind of like an AI story. I'm just saying. Here's the tweet. Master Chiefin 21. Sony is currently being sued. This person, Genesis Rhapsodist, says suing PlayStation means the state of California will get the money and no consumer will see any settlement kickback. That's probably true. It's a class action lawsuit, meaning the average California PlayStation consumer can expect a few dollars. Yeah, pretty much. This person says discs are no different. You're purchasing a license. You don't get IP rights. You don't get the right to copy the disc. You can't back up the damn thing. You can only sell it to a greater fool. That's it. Master Chiefin said the only way they can revoke a game fully on disc, that's the thing. Most of these games are not fully on disc, is to come to your house and take it or shut your PSN account down. Microsoft could, in theory, ban individual game discs because they have unique IDs. I don't know if they've done that. Sony discs don't have unique IDs. They could prevent any physical game from installing if they wanted to. Local dystopia lover says, when you buy a physical good, you have ownership over that product and all the rights that entails. When you buy a digital good, there's no ownership over anything. So services updating the language used for digital rentals is the least they can do. It's the bare minimum. That's true. You don't actually own it. And they're saying you need to change the language. Just call it like access now for a limited time. Hurry, hurry, hurry. Or add this game to your account. That's probably a more appropriate thing. So Kotaku's got it. They're being sued in 5 different countries over it. And now California as well. Some of the lawsuits have been litigated for years. Wow. Physical games historically acted as an indirect competitive constraint for consumers. Deviant legal founder Renee Otto told Kotaku in an email, consumers could buy a box copy from Amazon, Walmart, or local retailer, wait for the retailers to discount the inventory, purchase a used copy, borrow a game from a friend, or resell it afterwards. That's the problem. Deviant legal founder, that is the problem. They don't want you doing that. They want everybody to have their own license that they can just yank at any point in time. Even though Sony still controlled the platform, those alternatives limited the extent to which consumers depended on the PlayStation Store. So here's a Kakari versus Sony Interactive Entertainment in 2021. He filed a class action lawsuit. So this is not the first time. They've actually had several class action lawsuits filed against him. His lawyer's argument centered on retailers' ability to sell download codes for digital PlayStation games. They said in one complaint, the change, they said, made the PlayStation Store the only place publishers could sell digital PlayStation games. Sony made approximately $17 billion in revenue from the sale of digital PlayStation games in the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2021, lawyers wrote in the complaint. If the average price difference of 74% indicated by the above data is representative of the market, then overcharges resulting from Sony's monopoly could be in the range of $7 billion per year. That's what this is all about. We don't want to have to share with Walmart. We don't want to have to share with Amazon. We don't want people selling their copies to GameStop and then GameStop selling that used copy to another gamer because we don't get paid, right? That's how it works. PlayStation, you owe us. This was August 19th. And this was done by the same law firm suing Valve over its Steam platform for similar reasons. That case is ongoing. Let's see. Fair PlayStation. This is the Dutch. This is one we covered, I think. No, this is a different. Oh my God. How many lawsuits are they? Okay. So they got charged more for their games just so they can handle all the lawsuits. So, this is a Milberg Amsterdam, the Dutch arm of Milberg from the PlayStation You Owe Us suit announced in February of 2025. It was filing a complaint on behalf of Dutch consumer group Stitching, Massachad, and Consumet. This is effectively the same as the UK lawsuit. It's going to be tried based on Dutch law, so that's still ongoing. Sony announced it was stopping production of physical discs. Lucia Melkertz of the consumer advocacy group told WCF Tech that the end of physical discs removes the last place where a PlayStation game could still be bought and sold at a competitive price. That is the point. That is exactly the point. That's what they're trying to do. Maximum profit. No discs means no secondhand market, no alternative to the PlayStation Store. So from 2028, Sony alone decides what a game costs and how long you're allowed to use it. That's exactly the harm our fair PlayStation claim is about. Price can never be fair when the buyer is left with no ownership and no alternative. So this was an update. Okay, so they said Representative Milberg responded after publication with additional content. So we're currently in the first stage where the court has to rule on several preliminary questions, including jurisdiction, et cetera, et cetera. It says at its core, the case concerns Sony's abuse of its dominant position, which translates into an unreasonably high Sony tax of 30% on PlayStation Store transactions. Well, Apple got sued for that too. A few further data points we're looking at building into our own submissions on the disc phase out. The secondhand game market is estimated at some $7.2 billion globally, and analysts have said it could steadily shrink and potentially disappear once Sony stops producing discs. Physical media also remain far from dead. PlayStation still sold an estimated 70 million physical discs in 2025, and several of this year's biggest titles, including Ghost of Yotai and Resident Evil Requiem, sold well above the platform average in physical copies. I'd say older gamers or collectors, maybe. suggesting demand for ownership is still there for the games people care most about. We'd also note that Sony's own reported digital sales percentage runs somewhat higher than our own independent estimates, a gap we think is worth scrutinizing. The thing about the digital sales is they're going to include games that are only available digitally, that you don't have the option of buying on disc, so a lot of indie titles or whatever, and that's going to muddy things too. It's like you show us your like flagship first party titles, and if people are buying the disc or doing the download, but it's really sad. Like even when you go to Walmart, remember when they used to have like tons and tons of games at Walmart? Remember going to GameStop and they actually had walls of games that weren't like ass old copies of FIFA, and there was like an entire wall of physical discs that you could look at, and they don't really do that much anymore. I guess they have Switch and whatever, but it's not like it used to be. Now it's just all like Funko Pops and shit. Looks like a Spencer gift in there. But anyway, guys, what do you think? I think Sony's going to have to pay through the nose if they're going to go through with this. And I'm still convinced they might walk it back before it's all said and done. I'm just saying. Gonna wrap it up. Please subscribe. We'll talk later.